Stories from the Mahabharata. So we're first going to do a little bit of a workshop on that title. So it's Maha, you all can say.
Maha.
And then Bharata.
Bharata.
So India was once known as Bharat, and then sometimes they just throw an A at the end, so Bharata, and so it's Mahabharata. Although, to be honest, I've come across different iterations of that as well. But if you're saying it that way, you can at least say, you come across and come correct to 70% of the people out there. So, yeah, I'm really happy to be here. This started as a podcast, actually. My wife and I do a podcast where I tell stories from the Mahabharata to her and to a rotating guest. It's a conversational, comedic kind of telling with plenty of swears. And then I did that kind of here, the American School of Storytelling, and decided that this is a lovely venue and opportunity to tell it in, I guess, in a sense, a more traditional way, which is not a word I often subscribe to be honest. So I'm really happy to be here doing that. So, yeah, we're just going to get started. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So where we're picking off of the story is that we're going to do is Arjuna and his rivals. Given events in the last couple of weeks, I feel like I need to adapt a couple of things. Just as the opportunity to take, to be in the moment. But we'll start with some of this idea of who Arjuna is. So the story of the Mahabharata is primarily about, it comes to this war and this rivalry between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, who are cousins. There are 5 Pandavas who are seen as the heroes, and then there are 100 of the Kauravas who are seen as the villains and the rivals, both vying for the kingship. This is fairly early in the story of where we're at, but even though it's early in the story, there have actually already been some attempts of murder by the Kauravas on the Pandavas that have been swept under the rug. So now the Pandavas have kind of realized this, they're a little bit more aware that their cousins have been trying to kill them, and fortunately for the stories we're going to tell now, those attempts of murder, of child murder, because they're all like 14 at this time, have at least going to be part of this the story today. So you have the Pandavas, and the middle Pandava is Arjuna, and the oldest brother of the Kauravas is Duryodhana. And we're at this point now where all these boys, they're all boys, have been learning what is Kshatriya arts. Kshatriya in this time, in this universe, in this world of stories, are the warrior kings. So everything is kind of divided into the warrior king class, which is the Kshatriyas, the Brahmanas, who are the holy people who also can develop mystic powers, and then basically everybody else. So right now, the Pandavas, the Kauravas, have been studying to be warriors. And they've been studying to be warriors under a gentleman known as Kripa. And we'll start with Kripa's origin story, because it's kind of fascinating. Kripa and his sister Kripi were born when their father, who was celibate for decades, saw a fairy, in essence, an apsara, and got excited and spilled his semen on the riverbank, and then went on his way. And then soldiers from the kingdoms of Hastinapura, which is where everything is kind of centered around, soldiers from Hastinapura discovered these 2 babies just on the riverbank. That had sprouted from the semen and the earth. And this is actually who Kripa and Kripi are. So they have this kind of mystical origin story to them. Their father was one of the Brahmana classes. And within the stories of the Mahabharata, they have their own kind of great acumen and ability to become, in a sense, super beings. And added to that is the fact that Kripa, of course, has been studying what is known as the Vedas, which are the texts of knowledge in this world and that do actually exist. And so Kripa is someone who has learned all the arts of being a Kshatriya, and he's teaching all of these boys, these 105 boys, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and they're all excelling. They're all picking up the warrior arts, and that includes swordsmanship, working with the spear, with the mace, and most valuable of all is archery. You will always, Indian gods will always have usually many arms, carrying many things, but the bow and arrow is the one thing that they carry the most. It's the idea of focus and then also of balance. And so Arjuna, middle child of the Pandavas, has been excelling in archery. And there comes a point when their grandfather Bhishma realizes that Kripa, their teacher, has taught them all that he knows, and the boys have kind of plateaued at this level. And they're all fantastic warriors, able to shoot 100 arrows per minute, and just at that point. So Bhishma is looking for a new teacher and has been struggling to find one. The boys, at some point, start playing a game just in their vast courtyards. And the game involves a short stick and a long stick. And both sticks are pointy at the end. And the game is, the short stick's on the floor, and with the other one it's spun around. And because of the points at both ends, you can actually do it so fast that you pick it up, raise it up, and smash it as hard as you can. And so the boys have been doing this. Arjuna's brother Bhim, known for being super strong, does this, spins it up, gets the perfect shot, and smacks this thing, and it ends up going over the courtyard into a whole new area. So the boys all run to it, and they look around and they can't find the dang thing. And then they finally see it's fallen down a well. And now they're like stuck. I don't know personally why they couldn't make another stick. I don't know what the material is. But their toy is now at the bottom of this well. And they're looking around and trying to figure, like, what do we do? How do we get it? Duryodhana, the Kauravas, is like, well, why don't we lower Bhim? Bhim's the one who knocked it in there. Why doesn't he go down there and get it? Of course, Duryodhana has already tried to kill Bhim before, so the Pandavas are a little wise to that idea. Now, not far from them is this older man, skinny, like muscular older man, who's just kind of been watching them. And they latch eyes with him, and their first thought is like, what is someone doing here in the courtyard? This is where our master Kripa lives. We don't know who this gentleman is. And the gentleman starts mocking them. He's like, you guys are Kshatriyas. You guys are warrior kings. You can't figure out how to get the stick out of the well. Any Kshatriya should be able to do that. Arjuna is kind of entranced by this person. There's something more to him. And because of the ego of the other boys, and especially the Kauravas, they start snapping back. It was like, who are you? We have fantastic warriors. Here are all the things we can do. Who are you to mock us? How dare you mock us? Like, I mean, it's not like you could actually get it out of there. And so this gentleman picks up a blade of grass, and he focuses on this blade of grass as he folds it and rolls it up in his hand, and turns this blade of grass basically into a tiny little spike, which he flings down into the well, and it pierces the stick. He then takes another blade of glass, and again, rolls it up, folds it into another little spike, and throws it, and it hits the end of the other blade of grass. Once more, once more, once more, until he keeps throwing them in, they keep piercing the one before it, and he essentially makes an entire rope made of the blades of grass. and he pulls the whole thing up. At this point, all the boys are enamored by this gentleman. How is this even possible? What sorcery is this? Is this sorcery? Is it just cold skill? And this gentleman's not done yet. He takes off his ring and he tosses it down the well. And then he borrows one of the boys' bow and arrow, and he shoots the arrow in such a way that it goes down the well, captures the ring, and comes back up. At which point the boys now are dumbfounded. Arjuna is extremely intrigued. Arjuna is always looking to be better, always fascinated with archery more than anything. The boys, the gentleman tells them to get Bhishma, their grandfather, so one of them runs to get Bhishma, explains to him what just happened. And so Bhishma comes back and talks to this gentleman who tells him his story. And as a process of that story, also his name. This gentleman's name is Drona. Drona means pot, just clay pot. And the reason for his name is that his father saw an apsara. His father was also a brahmacharya, also a powerful sage, who has been celibate for decades, saw a beautiful spirit, and managed to get it all into a pot. I'm a fantasy writer, and I'm like, I've never done anything like this. This is something. And the variations of what else was in that pot at the time and what it was used for. But essentially, Drona comes and, again, just is born out of that pot, known as a Drona, which is why his name is also Drona. Now, Drona, also of the brahmacharya class, his father at one point is teaching, and he goes to teach a king, and Drona, as a young child, befriends the prince, whose name is Drupada. And they make such wonderful friends, even though one is a brahmacharya and one is a king, or one is a prince who will be king. And there comes a point when the two declare their friendship for each other, and Drupada says to Drona that, once we go up, it doesn't matter what classes we are, what is mine is your, half of what is mine will be yours should you request it. Many years later, now Drona is a brahmacharya, so he has been living within his means, goes out for alms, so not focused on money at all. But he has a son named Ashwatthama. And there comes a point when Drona is hurt by how poor he is. It's never bothered him before. But he is so poor that he can't even have a single cow. And at one point, his young son, once the people who his young son were playing with, once they find out that he's never tasted milk, they mix rice powder and water and give it to him, telling him it's milk. And he's very happy to have tasted milk. But Drona, having seen all this, seeing his son humiliated, in spite of being a brahmacharya, he was meant to take this in stride, becomes angry and furious, and he decides to approach his old friend and ask for the half the kingdom that his old friend said he would give him. When he goes to do that, his old friend, who is now king, laughs him off. He says, "You are a brahmacharya, you are a beggar, I am a king, this is not how things are. What we said as children doesn't count for this. If you want, you can beg me. If you want, you can ask for alms and I will give you a cow." But Drona, at this point, so outraged, so hurt, simply walks off and decides one way or another he is going to get half his old friend's kingdom. And one of the ways he seems to do this now is he's got boys who are already powerful warriors. So he makes a deal with the grandfather Bhishma. I will train your boys. I will make them the best they can be, and in return, they will help me take my revenge on my old friend. And so, that deal is made. That part of the story is something that will come later. But we'll focus now on this developing relationship that Drona has with Arjuna, which starts off a little rusty. Because even though in this cast and by this agreement, Dronacharya is meant to treat everyone the same. He's meant to give all his students the exact same opportunities, the exact same teachings, the exact same lessons, discipline them the exact same way. But he has a son, and he has preferences towards his son. What he does is, before lessons start, you need to bring me this amount of water in the pot that I give you from the river. And then, as soon as the first person arrives who's filled up their water pot, the water pot, then the lessons start. So he kind of creates this need for the boys to compete against each other, or at least make sure they're doing this, getting the water and coming back in time. And if they're late, they're going to miss lessons. What he does, though, he gives his son Ashwatthama a bigger jug. So whereas all the other boys need to go back from the river and back to the training ground 5 times, Ashwatthama only needs to do it 4 times. So Arjuna tries hard. More than anyone else, Arjuna races and he tries to get there. And it's mostly just the fact that he's missing lessons. He's missing teachings from the great Drona. And Drona is teaching them all kinds of skills. He is teaching them even what is known as the astras, which are magic arrows. So there are arrows of fire, there are arrows of water, there are arrows that raise up the earth. And so anytime anyone is late, they're not getting as much of these lessons. And Arjuna, determined to learn everything that he can from this rare opportunity, is troubled by this. And what he does is he learns what is known, he spends more time learning the Varunastra, which is the water arrow. And at some point, what he does, he shoots the water arrow into his pot, and it just fills up with water. And so now he beats everyone else there, including Ashwatthama. Drona cannot take fault with this. The instruction was to bring water, to fill up the water pot, and the fact now that Arjuna is using the teachings that he has been taught. And so Drona is frustrated by this, but he has made an agreement, and also his admiration of Arjuna now is also kind of going up. He still tries to inhibit him in some ways, like how can I slow him down? Because Arjuna, after everyone else does the training, which is plenty, Arjuna continues to practice. Arjuna continues to go long into the night, practicing, trying the Kshatriyas, shooting arrows with his bow, trying everything he can. And he usually comes even to dinner where everyone else is gone, late, has his meal, the lamps are on. Dronacharya instructs the cook. After this time, put off all the lights, turn off all the lamps. So just as another means to limit Arjuna and to make it at least more difficult for him. And so Arjuna, one day, comes back late from doing extra training, starts eating, and all the lights, all the lamps are put out. Arjuna continues to eat, grabbing food, putting it into his mouth in this dark and black silence. And he's thinking about this as he does it. Like the silence allows for him to kind of look at this from a different perspective, that I can still eat, in spite of not being able to see. And the things that he's learning from Drona is about how you trust your senses, you hone your instincts to know about the world around you, whether you have sight or even whether you don't have sight. And it inspires Arjuna to think, what if I do archery blindfolded? How much faster will I develop myself if I do it blindfolded? How much faster will my instincts and intuition and connection with the world be? And so he does that, and his skills start to become even more prolific from these activities. So, Drona at this point starts to realize that this is what he is meant to be doing. He starts seeing the beauty of what Arjuna is doing. And at another time, they're by the river, and crocodile comes and immediately snaps at Drona's leg. Drona panics. Everyone starts to panic. And there's so much energy and worry and fear that happens in this terrible moment. And yet it only lasts a moment. Because not even a second later, the crocodile is dead. Arjuna, at the moment it happened, pushes his bigger brother Bhim out of the way, 2 arrows, shoots, one of the crocodile's eye, one of the crocodile's mouth. And it's so instant that Drona realizes in this moment that he has been unfair to this boy, that this boy is excelling, and he is doing such amazing things. And he takes notice of this. He sets up another test in a way. He has his son Ashwatthama climb up a tall tree and place a wooden bird on top. The boys line up. Drona stops them. He points out to the wooden bird, and he says, okay, we are going to try and shoot this in the eye. But first, tell me, what is it that you see? So he asked Arjuna's oldest brother, what do you see? And his oldest brother, Yudhishthira, says, I see the bird. And Drona has him step back. You won't hit it. Duryodhana, the brother, the Kauravas, comes up, and he now wants to outwit him. He wants to be better. So he's like, oh, I see the bird, and I see the branch it's on. I see more than this fool Yudhishthira does. And Drona has him step back. You won't hit it. Bhim then comes up and again tries to outdo. I see the bird, I see the branch, I see the tree. And he has him step back. The boys can't seem to figure out what it is that Drona wants. They keep expanding the vision. They're like, I see this, I see the wind, I can feel the wind, I can see the entire tree, I can see the leaves that are in the way. And finally, it's Arjuna's turn. And he asks Arjuna, Arjuna, what do you see? I see the eye of the bird. And everyone else leans in to hear what else that he sees. But Arjuna says nothing else. All Arjuna sees is the eye of the bird. And Drona says, shoot. And Arjuna shoots. And he gets the bird in the eye. The wooden bird in the eye. There's so much within the Mahabharata that is just about the power of intense focus and the ability to block out everything else, to stay that focused on such a singular item. At this point, Drona promises him. He teaches Arjuna what is known as the Brahmastra, which is in a sense a nuclear arrow that can burn the entire world. But unless he shoots a demon with it, but if he fires it at anyone else, anything else, it's the end of the world. But it is at this point that Drona believes that Arjuna is ready to have this, just from the way he killed a crocodile immediately, senses danger, trusts his instincts. He's the whole package in that respect. And he promises Arjuna, at this point, I will make you the greatest archer. And at this point, his relationship with Arjuna is one of adoration and love. And Drona, just because of the potential, because of this promise and now history that they found, he is, in a sense, more loving of Arjuna than even his own son Ashwatthama. There's a point later in the book, actually, 2 weeks from now when we tell the story, when he openly declares that I love Arjuna more than I love my own son. His son is right there, horrible. But he makes that promise to Arjuna. Arjuna takes this in and is very happy, relaxed that he is going to now be the greatest archer. And Drona only teaches these boys, he only teaches the Kshatriyas. Later though, as the boys are out and hunting, and they have a hunting dog, the hunting dog goes out, kind of scouts ahead, and they hear the dog whimpering, and the dog runs back to the boys, and the dog's mouth has 7 arrows that have come and pierced themselves to keep the dog's mouth open. And the boys are floored, like who on earth has the skill to do this except someone trained by Drona? And Arjuna, for the first time, is starting to feel insecure. Not so much upset about what's happened to his dog, or their dog, but just the skill that was required to do this, to shoot 7 arrows perfectly symmetrical from each other, and to pierce at the same time to hold the mouth open. So the boys run, they trace the dog's footsteps into the forest, into the jungle. Sorry, the dog's footsteps into the jungle. And there they see this one boy of the woods, what is known as a Nishada, people of the woods. People who are, in fact, shunned by all of the classes of society. They ask this boy what happened. They're like, oh, and the boy very playfully just tells them, oh, he was making a lot of noise. So I just fired some arrows to shut him up. And they say, how do you, in a shada of all types of people, have the skill to do that? And the boy simply says, oh, Dronacharya taught me. The boys are baffled. Arjuna is broken. He runs back to Dronacharya, crying and weeping, like, what happened? Like, I thought you said that I would be the greatest. Now we've seen someone whose skill was so perfect. Why did you teach him? And Drona's confused. Drona has no idea what he's talking about. Like, I didn't teach anyone. I'm certainly not ever going to teach one of the Nishada. I will only teach Kshatriyas. So, Arjuna and Drona, they go back to see this boy. And they find Ekalavya, and right as they kind of come across Ekalavya, Ekalavya shoots an arrow to pick up a lotus flower and bring it to him. So they see immediately that skill. As soon as the boy sees Drona, he is so excited. He comes down from his tree and he goes and he makes the prayer stance towards Drona, which of course now Arjuna sees and like clearly this is like he has taught him. But Drona is still confused. There's a little bit of familiarity coming. And he remembers then, this boy came to him not some time ago and asked for Drona to be his teacher. And Drona rejected him. Drona said, I can't be your teacher. You are a Nishada. You're out of this class. Simply not allowed. Now the truth of the matter is that Drona himself was not meant to teach the Kshatriyas. He was taught by someone else, and he made a promise to that person not to teach outside of the Brahmana class. So certainly this high level of hypocrisy here by not being able to teach Ekalavya. But how did Ekalavya gain the skill? And so Ekalavya, in that meeting, even though Drona said he wouldn't teach him, he asked for Drona's blessing. Can I at least have your blessing? And Drona was like, sure. He gives him his blessing, thinking nothing of it. What Ekalavya did, he went back into the woods, and he started bringing some mud together and some stones, just bringing out some tree roots and some leaves. He makes for himself a statue, a mud statue of Drona, and really fine-tunes it, gets the eyelashes right, gets the eyes right, gets the hairs right, and makes a perfect replica of Drona out of what is around in the world. And he meditates towards that, and he acts as if this has been his teacher. This is a young boy, maybe 12 at the time, and for years and years has been taking instructions from this, and yet has become so impossibly skilled. What fascinates me is this idea that he has, in a sense, taught himself, in a sense connected to a deeper form of himself and the universe, to make, in a sense, a false idol, but he is so devoted to learning that he still manages to develop skills that it seems surpass even Drona's students. Drona has made a promise to Arjuna that he will make Arjuna the greatest archer. And he sees in this boy now a rival. And he takes advantage. He was like, wait, so I'm still your teacher. I'm still your sishya. So you owe me something for that. And the boy is elated. He's like, absolutely. Like, what can I give you? Give me your right thumb. And the boy, so devoted to his teacher, takes out a knife and slices off his thumb and gives it to his teacher. He still can do archery with his other hand, but he's not half as threatening as he was before. Arjuna at this point softens a little and starts to see a little bit more of who Drona is, and yet is also young as well. Grateful to the point that Arjuna, that his teacher is still securing his promise, but this cruelty is something that he'll begin to realize much later on. Now, fortunately, when Drona gave Arjuna the brahmacharya weapon, the one that will destroy the world, in that moment of humility, in that moment of almost being killed, he made Arjuna promise that if ever there comes a time when the two of us are on different sides, you will not hesitate. And Arjuna says, no, you're my sishya, you're my teacher, and Drona demands that, no, this is what you must promise me. So, later on in this great epic, we will start to see how that kind of comes into play. So yeah, Arjuna's rivals being Ashwatthama, and then Ekalavya, and then later we'll see some other people come about as well from this kind of same tradition. So that is what I've got for the stories of Arjuna right now. So yeah, if you guys want to stretch a little bit, go to the lesson. Otherwise, I'm going to go straight into these new stories I've got to become fascinated with, which are the stories of Krishna. So, are you ready for Krishna stories? Okay. So here's what to know about Krishna. Krishna is who here has heard of the Bhagavad Gita? So the Bhagavad Gita is the Hindu holy text that happens much later in the Mahabharata. And it is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And that is known as the Bhagavad Gita, which is the most religious text for a lot of Hindus. For me, it's the entire Mahabharata. But that's the one. So it's these two characters. Krishna is a character who is worshipped in India more so than I think so many others. There are chains of temples to this god. He's usually depicted as blue. But the reason he's depicted as blue is because he is actually so dark-skinned that if they were to portray him by his actual skin color, you wouldn't see anything. Right? You wouldn't see the holes in his nose. You wouldn't see anything at all. Everything would just be a black shadow if we were to depict him that way. So that is why he is often depicted as blue. His name, Krishna, literally means the dark one. So I think for me what I find fascinating about this is that through the Mahabharata you have all these characters who are known as beautiful, who are known as the most handsome, and they're all also known for having incredibly dark skin as well. So it's something that to me puts in contrast to even like Indian society now, which I find fascinating. But I'm also someone who's very into this idea of darkness and blackness and silence. And so the idea that he is this character who is, more than any other characters in Hindu mythology, God on earth, but then also is this blackness of emptiness, is something that has become fascinating to me the more I learn about him. What I love about the story, so Krishna as a baby is, as soon as Krishna is born, he is taken away sneakily to live in poverty as a gopal, which is basically a cowherd. The reason being, he has an evil uncle who wants to kill him because he believes Krishna is going to go up and kill him. Fortunately, the boy gets away. He gets away, but his 6 older siblings were killed. And so he goes to live a very poor lifestyle. The king sends all these demons after them, one after the other, and these demons do damage. There's one demon who is a nursemaid demon who is looking for him and who feeds young babies, and they die because she's looking for him to try and kill him. Fortunately, when she does get to Krishna, Krishna continues to suckle and suckle and suckle until she realizes, like, oh God, he's sucking the life out of me. And that's way, so Krishna ends up killing this nursemaid demon. There's another demon, there's a series of demons. There's a horse demon, which is interesting because horses in this time especially are usually only part of wealth and part of royalty. And Krishna is able to kind of, to deal with this horse demon as well. And there are all these other examples of royalty coming after Krishna from this king. And Krishna, young God, is able to do away with it and is very much against it. There's other stories later of Krishna where he also even goes up against other gods. There's a story of Krishna where, as a young boy, one thing to know about Krishna is he's a happy kid. He is happy throughout his life. And that's something to remember as I tell you some of these stories. There's points when we have priests who have all this food and ghee, clarified butter, and instead of giving it to poor people around them, they are throwing it into a fire. And this is part of what is known as a yajna, something very common within these stories, as devotionals to God. And Krishna comes and asks them, so why are you throwing all of this away into a fire for other real beings when you have all these people around you who could be consuming that, who are hungry? And the boys and the priests just shove him away, tell him to go away. He has no understanding of these things. Krishna finds a group of women and he tells it to them, and the women are like, those are our husbands. They don't know what they're talking about. They start feeding Krishna the food that they have. And they feel such elation from feeding him. Because in a sense, they're feeding like the universe. That is who Krishna being God, they are feeding the universe. Agni, the god of fire, speaks to the priests. So by the way, while you guys are here and feeding me, your wives are feeding the actual ultimate God. And the priests run back, but by that time Krishna and his brother have left. There's another tale of Krishna where the god Brahma, he decides to play a prank on Krishna. Krishna has shown himself to have all these different magical powers, and yet still Brahma wants to play a trick on him. So while Krishna is out playing, Krishna and his friends, and Krishna is very close with his friends, Brahma casts a spell on the cows and has all the cows leave and hide in a cave. He then casts a spell on all the boys and have them also hide in a cave. So to freak Krishna out, to have him try and find them. Krishna instead clones all of them. He makes replicas of the cows, he makes replicas of the boys, and things proceed as normal. Until finally Brahma loses his patience and simply surrenders to Krishna and returns the boys, at which point the clones all disappear. There's a character there's more of a title in this world of Indra. Indra is the king of the gods. And Krishna's people worship this king of the gods. It's something they have always done. This is tradition. Why would they stop? Krishna's a little dumbfounded by this. And he asks them, why are we worshipping this God in the heavens when everything we need, everything that is provided for us, is right here? We're looking at our mountain, the Govardhan mountain. Shouldn't we be worshipping the mountain? And it's because of the mountain that we have such lush rains. It's because of the mountain that we are so provided for. And so he actually convinces them to not hold the ceremonies to worship Indra. Indra becomes furious, and he sends torrents of rain against them. They are fearful. Krishna brings them all to the mountain, and gets under the mountain, grows to an incredible height, and he holds the mountain above all, his entire village, protecting them from the torrential rains. Indra again kind of surrenders, realizes that this is the avatar, and he puts down and he stops with the torrential rains. So there's this wonderful, beautiful aspect to me of Krishna, who, even though is, in a sense, in this world story, God, he's still someone who, in many ways, he believes in progress. He doesn't believe so much in idol worship. He behaves that, to me, in a way, is a way an agnostic or even an atheist would behave, with his defiance of these other gods. So, as we're looking for, he's certainly like, the poor man's God in that way. And he's someone who enjoys his life, enjoys who he is so much so. And the reasons I want to tell, I'm fascinated with these stories of Krishna for now, is I was talking to a friend of mine about the stories, and in the stories I read of this young, as he was a baby to his adulthood, till past adulthood, he was always so cheerful. And it is from that cheerful, from that creativity, that oftentimes he was able to help everyone around him. He's also such a god of friendship who has an emotional intelligence to him. An old friend of his visited him when he had become wealthy, because this friend was Sudama, was so poor. He had a son who was, they were all going hungry, and he promised his wife that, okay, I will be humble and I will ask my friend for help. And he goes to see his friend Krishna, who at this point is doing really well, and is fed tons of food. He needs to bring some back, but he can't get over his ego. and he cannot ask Krishna for help. And yet, when he goes back ready to tell his wife how he's disappointed them, Krishna the God has sent all this food out for him. Krishna didn't need to be asked. He understood why his friend had come. And some of the emotional intelligence of Krishna also comes from his femininity. When Krishna was a boy, and all these demons were coming after him, there was this idea that demons will only come after boys. And so his mom, adopted mom, dressed him up as a girl. And Krishna loved it. He loved being in this as a little baby. And then even later on as a teen, he, playful little rascal that he was, his friends, the gopis, the women friends, were all in the river, and he grabbed their clothes, and they demanded that he give their clothes back, and he's a little naive in this sense. It's like, no, come get them. And they sit and stew for a while, and then just decide whatever. They come out, no shame at all about their bodies that they had, and they dress Krishna as a girl to get back at him. And he kind of fights back, but not really. And when they've got him all decked out in a dress and jewelry and a necklace and earrings, the boy starts to dance. And he gets them all to dance with them. Later on in his life, he trades clothes with his wife as well to form another prank. And when you see images of Krishna, I've heard people say that they thought that, not some who have not grown up with him, believe that he was a girl, who believe that he was a woman. His familiarity and comfort with his own femininity, and in that sense, his security of his masculinity as well, was so beautiful, and part of it being his playful nature was just, to me, is one of the reasons that I've come to really almost see him as a comfort. Well, no, I do see him as a comfort. This character is, yes, he is God. But along this idea of that we are all in some ways form of God, that we are all connected. And I love now looking back at this idea that he is blackness, that he is the void, that he is the emptiness, that when we close our eyes, that all we see is the blackness. That is sometimes scary, but I'm someone who meditates. And when you meditate, you can do visualizations. And the creativity, the things that can spark from that, from Indian mythologies and then also from even Nordic mythologies, where there's this great, everything begins with an emptiness. And then something sparks within that emptiness, some sort of life, some sort of idea that comes up and becomes a whole universe of thought. To me, Krishna is this reminder that we're all our own universe, we're all fascinating beings. All the cells in our body, our brains, our body, and how it's all connected. And how when we really understand how it's all connected, how we have as much intelligence in our body as we do in our heads. And this idea also of his playfulness, and how a boy who is, and an adult who has had so much suffering going on around him, so much suffering, his brothers, older brothers killed, demons coming after him all the time, later on his kingdom, and then when he gets old, his entire clan even is cursed. And yet through it all, the memory and the thoughts and the pictures of Krishna as a god is that he is joyful and that he is happy. And I look as well from my own learnings of other things how when we are happy, when we are joyful, we are also simply more creative. We're able to connect more with one another. We're able to connect more with ourselves. And so that is all things that to me come up very clearly when looking at Krishna. And so the reason I wanted to bring him up is just with how this election went, and with like the darkness ahead, and simply, yes, we all do need, a lot of us do need some time, an extra time to mourn like what's happening. but to not give into it, because when we give into it, our worlds and our possibilities all start to close. And the idea of Krishna being someone who consciously maintains his happiness with the idea of knowing that it keeps on the possibilities of who we are and what we can achieve, and then him being just a truly God who behaves in a way who is love. He loves everyone, who believes he is known as a God of friendship. In Hindu mythology, you have gods with so many different names based on what they are. So Krishna himself has many different names, of which I could not tell you all of them. But certainly he is a God of friendship. And I think of that now, of how, and I think of course of his comfort with his femininity as well, and how certainly a deity now who I look to and can remember of someone who is a force of creativity and a force of such beautiful love as well. I come at these as a storyteller, and so to me Hindu mythology is this beautiful collection of stories, and having just come across these ones, I'm like, oh, I have to share these because they're such, I feel like they're stories that, at least for myself, inspire so much of what I think we can need and use, and how we can really see the power within ourselves and then within all of us around us. So, yeah, that's what I've got for you guys. Thank you all so much. I'm doing, please come talk to me. I'm doing another set of stories. I'm doing the story of one of his other Bibles next week at We the Starborn at a different venue. And then, I'll be back here on December 7th for the exhibition match where all the Astras I talked about, or the magical arrows, wait till you see what that looks like. It's a fantastic visual story with more kind of elements of just Hindu mythology and culture as well. So, that's a good question. Thank you all. Please do come say hi. I'll be there at my station. Thank you.